Entering the Mayo Experience.
That Mayo Experience. That Mayo Experience. That Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by Jägermeister. Give your beer a real shot this summer. An ice-cold shot, Jägermeister. We only got 1 hour. We have a hard out at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, so we're going to go right into the questions. But first, there is one thing, like the episode goes a long way. If you want some giveaways for some DK bucks, go back and check out Monday and Tuesday's episode where the giveaways are right off the top. You can figure out how to do that. Plus, if you check the description, you can find the DK cheat sheet, the picks cheat sheet, all the columns, everything you need to know, plus where to subscribe to the podcast, which I recommend that you do, and rate, review, and give it 5 stars. Thank you. Reid Fowler is here from DK Live. What is going on, my man?
Nothing much. I just like that little Jägermeister spot up top. It brings me back to the to the good old days. But ready to get going.
All right, so let's jump right into this because we only have a limited amount of time. First question comes from Greg. Thoughts on Bryson DeChambeau's ownership for the week? From what I'm seeing right now, and a lot of this has to do with the build that I'm seeing from FantasyNational.com, which, become a member today. Take advantage of that new time. Have you done the new time travel yet, by the way?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, you can kind of see, right, like exactly what it sounds like, who's coming into form, and you tweeted out something really interesting in terms of strokes gained ball striking. Now you start to see what guys come into form. It kind of correlates to that graph that you see when guys play well. If they play well at this time, it's just another tool that you can add to the repertoire. So it's really good.
So based on the Fantasy National ownership projections that I'm seeing right now, it seems like a lot of people are not going to that plus 10K range. Now, I don't know how indicative that's going to be in something, let's say, like the giant $5 where there's so many entries going on. You might see guys getting piled on like Spieth or Justin Thomas. Patrick Reed actually projects to be the highest owned of that 10K plus range right now. As it pertains to Bryson DeChambeau, it looks like he's going to come in anywhere between 17 and 22%, depending on the contest, depending on anything. But people with these balanced builds are starting with Paul Casey and then dropping immediately to Bryson DeChambeau. So I think he's going to be one of the more chalkier plays of the week.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you Daily Roto, those guys in terms of going for the green, they came out with a very interesting statistic in terms of, right, and you've talked about this on the show as well, is if you put these guys head to head with some of these other guys, right, you want to look for matchups in golf in terms of the pricing and not necessarily, right, like we do in other DFS. You want to look at the matchup with their value if they have returns. So a guy like Paul Casey, who's potentially, or DeChambeau, who could be in that 20%, if he's going head to head against Jordan Spieth or Rory, if we come out with Vegas odds and this stuff is head to head, are these guys twice as much, or is Casey going to be twice as much in terms of that? Probably not, right? So you want to find value. You can definitely be contrarian if you go at the top there, but you have to go down in that sub 7K, which is a little dicey. But yeah, DeChambeau is a solid play, right? He's playing some of the best golf outside of Brooks. He's playing some of the best golf that we've seen of recent.
Yeah, well, it's kind of to pile on what you're saying right now. In terms of the Bet365 head-to-head matchups, the only offered betting matchup with Bryson DeChambeau right now is him head-to-head versus Marc Leishman, and Marc Leishman is the heavier favorite against Bryson DeChambeau. Right. So if you're looking for some sort of pivot, it doesn't look like Leishman's going to be super highly owned. So if you wanted to get away from the Bryson sort of chalk that we're talking about, and listen, a chalk lineup just split the millionaire maker because it was chalk, it was Duke. But still, you'd take the 575 grand. I actually talked to Brandon at Daily Sports Geek on Twitter and dailysportsgeek.com. That show's coming out Friday about how he ended up on that lineup, and he has some pretty funny things to say about chalk and what he normally does and how this is just it's great that he won all the money. But he's like, this is like the worst lineup I've ever built, and somehow it won. So it's a really interesting conversation. Very good guy. I recommend checking that out again Friday on this feed and on the pod feed. But I like DeChambeau more than I like Leishman. Maybe I shouldn't. Vegas clearly likes Leishman just a teensy bit more, so maybe that's an opportunistic pivot play that you can make. But that's what I'm looking at, 17 to 22% in the giant $5 for Bryson. Next one, will Keegan Bradley, this is from Dave, or Luke List find his putter this week? Their tee to green is nice, but the greens might be pretty fast. I mean, this is the thing every week. This is why we play these guys every single week. Can their putter ever catch up? And it doesn't need to lap the field. It just needs to be slightly above average. I prefer Luke List over Keegan Bradley, but I am playing both this week. You?
Yeah, same. I think you got to play. I'm in the same vein with Jordan Spieth, right? And we've been playing Luke List all season, just waiting for that. So I think, and Feinberg mentioned it too on Monday's show. You got to play these guys, right? Luke List is, and that's what we've seen, I think, of recent at this course, and just recently is these extreme ball strikers like a Luke List. Keegan falls into that category as well. When are their putters going to get hot? Look, I took the contrarian view last week with Jay Day, that his tee to green game and his ball striking was not good and his putting was well. And look what happened, right? So you want to get these guys where, especially at a course like a Pete Dye, you're going to want tee to green. So I'm taking List in that sense.
Yeah, I'm actually going to use both of them. I have more Luke List than I have Keegan Bradley, and right now the market looks like it's settling on more Keegan than Luke List in terms of ownership. If that was going to be a decider between the two for people, it does look like Luke List is going to come in with lower ownership. Next question from Ponderosa Sports. Core 3 is Spieth, Cantley, and Chesson Hadley. Thoughts? 3 guys I'm using, so I can't really disagree with that. They're not. Spieth is my most overweight player of the week. I believe I have him in 45% of my lineups, and he's one of 2 guys that I'm using from above 10K plus. So I have no problems with that.
Yeah, and if you look at the rolling report on Fantasy National, Spieth's putting is, yes, we've all seen it, right? He's missed the most putts within 5 feet in his career. I think there's some stat that we heard last week that he's missed about 8 within 5 feet, which I think last year, the year before that, he missed half of that. His putting is not necessarily, at the worst spot that it has been of recent. So I like Spieth. I like him at a contrarian play. So yeah, all 3 of those guys are in my lineups as well.
Next question comes from Bryce. Bryce asked, talk me out of Charley Hoffman. Vegas likes him. Good course history. What is his ownership like? I don't think that he's going to be chalky. And it's always hard. Charley Hoffman's one of the really hard guys to get a good ownership gauge of because he's very popular among very public players. And where this is a week following a major, you're probably going to see a lot of holdover money from guys that either won or deposited $100 and played 3 millionaire maker lineups in a cash game. They got $20 left going. Charley Hoffman seems like a very popular play in that means. And they just saw him at the U.S. Open perform pretty well. Right now, it looks like Charley Hoffman coming in around 10% ownership. So if you're big on Charley Hoffman, I just happen to like other guys in that range a little bit more. It's not a dislike for Charley Hoffman. But again, when you're cutting down your core of players, you can only play so many. Like I'm not playing Xander, but I think that I would like Xander more than Charley there, and I think that's what the ownership is kind of proving itself out to be too. So if you like Charley, there's no real risk in taking him. It's very easy to go overweight on what his percentage is going to be, and if you think that he's going to be up there and continue with that course form, I'd say go for it.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I would add to that, you're absolutely right, is Charley Hoffman in seasons where we see him pop, he's popped somewhere, right? And we've seen him on majors. We've seen him at Augusta, and last week we saw him quite a bit. So I think what's happening is the recency bias. And on top of that, he plays well here. So with that course history, look, that price at 8,700, like you were saying, you got Bubba right there, right? If you want to go down, even Cantley, which I think is going to be chalk. There are other guys, like you were saying, in that high 8K range that I'd rather play than Hoffman. And Hoffman's been kind of pedestrian this year outside of those majors. So again, I'd be fine, like you were saying, if 10% is where he's going to land on ownership, 15% overweight, 20%, depending on how many lineups you make, is not going to have extreme amount of exposure. And a guy like Hoffman can rattle off birdies, right? He's a guy that can get hot. So if you want him good, I'd be totally fine with fading because I'm going with Bubba at that price range. So I'm not playing Hoffman, but he's a good play.
Greg asks, Zach Johnson or Brandt Snedeker this week? I'm going with Zach Johnson over Brandt Snedeker. If you look at how they're trending, Zach Johnson 12th last week, despite hating the course on Saturday at the U.S. Open. Snedeker did make the cut. He's made a few cuts in a row, but he's been doing it all with his putter. The irons have just not developed yet. And hey, maybe it's something like you were talking about with Jason Day last week, where maybe that his irons do regress back to what the norms would be over the course of his long-term form, and hey, the putter stays hot, and boom, Brandt runs away with this. But I look at Zach Johnson, who's been really lights out with his irons and cannot make a putt. I think I would rather bank on the putting regressing with the guy who's hitting his irons really well at a shorter course, where even when you look at something like Wiley, or you look at Sedgefeld, or even especially TPC Deer Run, where Zach Johnson has had so much success over the years with a very short course, Zach Johnson can utilize his wedge game here. I just prefer him a lot more. I have 0 Brandt Snedeker. I have a lot of Zach Johnson.
Yeah, and just one thing I'll add to that. If we think it's going to be a wedge fest, which we've seen of recent, I mean, that's Zach Johnson, right? That's his MO. where he gets it in the fairway and he hits it to where he can hit it at that 100 to 125 and he gets it close. What's also interesting about Zach Johnson as well is his par 4 scoring at that 400 to 450. Over the last 24, he's inside the top 15. So he's precise on those, like you were saying, right? What we've seen of Zach of late is his putting has kind of regressed, but he's still a guy that can really attack these smaller courses, and that's what you want with Zach Johnson. He pops in some of these bigger ones, but the harder courses with the harder fields because he's a grinder. But same with me. I have more Zach than I have Brandt Snedeker just because of that narrative I'm telling myself that I'd like wedge players, especially in the par 4 scoring as well.
Give the episode a like, and don't forget to drink some Jägermeister. Can really help you filling out these lineups if you're looking for crazy pivot plays. Greg Ellis asks, Harman, Cantley, ZJ, a good way to start a balanced lineup. I mean, I'm not using any Harman, so that's going to be tough for me. Also, very Anderkirst this week, Brian Harman. But if I'm going to talk up Zach Johnson in the way that he has played at some of these corollary courses, we look at Brian Harman, always been very good at Pete Dye tracks, plus he's won the John Deere before, and he's performed really well at this event in the past, too, that I get it, and he's not going to come up with very high ownership at all. I'm just preferential to like Bubba and Cantlay, or even if I was going to start my balance lineup, I think that Paul Casey is a very good way to start.
Yeah, I don't think you necessarily have to go that low to start your balanced lineup. I mean, if those within your core, right? Yeah, of course. Like you're getting decent players and you're getting pseudo win equity, obviously not with Cantlay. But at the same time, like you said, right, there are narratives for these guys like Harman to play well. I'm not playing any Harman. Again, I don't think his recent form is we've seen him pop in some places, but I want to see it over a longer period. I do like Cantlay and ZJ, so those two I'm fine with, but I'm pivoting off of Harman in that area just because I really like Cantlay, I really like other guys a little bit more than Harman. I would go Snedeker over Harman in that sense.
Yeah, I think I would go Snedeker over Harman too, but I'm taking JB Holmes over Snedeker as well.
There we go.
There's another guy that I like a little bit. Again, that's more of an iron play, and when it comes down to Harman, he is actually following very much what Brandt Snedeker is up to right now. He's saving himself with the putter and just not hitting his irons well at all, and his around the green game has been surprisingly poor. Now, if he's hitting his irons well, he won't need to lean on his around the green game. But if he's not hitting his irons well and his around the green game is just piss poor, then it's going to be really problematic just to get through the cut. I would like to see Brian Harman coming in with better form right now. Again, he can make a very good pivot play because people are off of him, but I understand the reasons why they are off of him, and I'm choosing to believe those reasons. So no Brian Harman for me. Next question. Yep. Kevin asks, can we really count on Bubba? Here's the thing. Can you ever really count on Bubba? If there's going to be some weeks, one of the things you need to watch out for with Bubba is it a Bubba happy place? I know it sounds like such a stupid narrative, but Bubba goes back to the same places every single year, and when he's in a good run and having a good year, he tends to perform well at those places. Bubba last year sucked. He missed the cut here. There was no reason to take Bubba, but he's in the midst of a very good season. He already has 2 wins at a course where he had previously won in the past in Riviera, a Pete Dye course where he's won here before. He's won twice here before. He's won at Zurich. He's won at Austin Country Club. Clearly, Pete Dye courses have something that Bubba like. Maybe it's the creativity that you can use off the tee. Maybe it's that he can hit his 2-iron way down the fairway and still have a wedge in. I don't know what it is, but these shorter courses, you always think Bubba, he needs to be Riviera. He needs to be able to bomb it and shape his shot. You need to be able to move the ball left and right to left here too. So there is creativity on approaches, and if you can keep the putter going, I think the ball striking is exactly where it needs to be. I think he's underpriced this week.
Absolutely. And if you look at other stats, you're exactly right. I mean, not to beat a dead horse, but even off the tee, right, where Bubba can go a little astray, he's going in the right direction, right? He's off the tee. He's been fantastic. And I think over the last 4 to 8, he's in that top 20. So even if, he does spray it, right? Even if he clubs down, I think he's still a guy that, you're right, on these courses, on these Pete Dye courses, there's something that fits Bubba's eye. And especially at a U.S. Open in Shinnecock and some of these others that don't, we see what happens. So I'm also playing Bubba as well, just because if you look at the corollaries, it's there. So I like Bubba at that price as well.
Yeah, and Bubba is my highest ranked bet of the week in terms of odds, 28-1. You can find my entire betting picks, cheat sheet, and one and dones up on my Facebook page, facebook.com/thepme. That's up there right now, along with my first round leader bets. Played 1 head-to-head this week, and Spoiler alert, it features Zach Johnson as the winner of his matchup. So hopefully that comes through. 2 top 10s up there, too, because Rory Sabbatini rates out really well for me from that key par 4 distance you talked about as well. 400 to 450 yards, where 8 of them fall this week. Rory Sabbatini, he's like the only guy that appears, no matter if you look short term where he's the best or even long term, he's still cropping up there. So that's a good range for Rory Sabbatini. He's playing shockingly well right now. Next question. Patrick Cantlay and Chesson Hadley getting a lot of love, yet both are 0 of 2 in making cuts at this course. Cantlay's was a few years ago, but can we just ignore course history? I think you can, especially with these two. Where, I mean, with Cantlay, he took years off with a back injury. He's come back as a completely different player, clearly way higher ranked in terms of the world rankings. And even when you go back and take a gander of, hey, why did they miss the cut? I always think that really goes into it. That week, like in 2014, Patrick Cantlay just could not hit a fairway, and that was just really problematic. He's doing that now. The putting, who knows? Patrick Cantlay has been a very piss-poor putter all season long. He's not quite in the Luke-less Keegan Bradley level, but he's in the lower tier of putting. And so if you can get a good putting week out of him, he should be pretty good here. And plus, he shot a 60 at this course before, so it's been a long time for him. In terms of Chesson Hadley, Chesson's just a different player than he was, honestly, a year ago or at any other point of his career. This is his high point, so it's really hard to look to see what Chesson Hadley has done in the past and try to correlate it with anything right now. It was a lot like Chez Reavie at the beginning of the season, where he went on this run. It was atypical of anything he had done for the rest of his career, so he just kept playing Chez every single week. And you knew he was going to hit a wall at some point, but you had to ride the wave until it stopped. It just seems like, listen, if you want to fade Chesson Hadley because he's going to be super chalky, that makes a lot of sense to me, because we know at some point the bottom is going to fall out here on Chesson Hadley. It just, in a weak field, he's such a good price that I know a lot of people are going with CT Pan, and CT Pan's going to prove to be very chalky this week too, probably like 12, 14% ownership, which I think is kind of crazy. I'd rather just have Chesson Hadley.
Exactly. And just to add on to that, like you were saying, is, there's certain players like a Bubba where I think that narrative works, saying, okay, well, if he doesn't really like a course like we just talked about, then you can fade Bubba. And that to me is a lot easier than to say, okay, Patrick Cantlay is one of these second-tier guys that has played well of recent and is knocking on the door to actually get, into his victory. Another guy who's played well here who missed a cut twice in a row is Patrick Reed. And now look, after he's missed those cuts, I think back in 13 and 14, right, there are different reasons why potentially these guys miss cuts. I wouldn't only correlate it to saying they don't like this course, therefore they're missing the cut, except when it comes to some guys like Bubba. Same thing with Chesson Hadley, right? I think when he came on tour, he thought, his what didn't stink, and he had to really get a reality check, went back down to the web, and now he's a new player. Granted, he still has some things to work on, like his around the green game, but even at the beginning of the season with Chesson, where we saw his around the green be absolutely atrocious, he's turned that around to where it's not necessarily totally taking him out of tournaments and totally missing the cuts. He's playing well. Play these guys until like you see that where it's like trending potentially right in a direction that you don't like. I wouldn't say just because they missed the cut that this is not a course fit, because these guys are too good. These guys are too good, and some of these guys obviously want to play these courses so they can get more money, so they can, it's not necessarily just a poor course fit.
Greg asked, we're going to see single-digit ownership on Brooks Koepka this week. The answer to that is yes. He's going to be the lowest owned of the top 5 guys, which is hilarious. But I think a lot of people are just kind of going with the narrative, myself as well, that just coming off, he had committed to this before winning the U.S. Open. I'm shocked he didn't withdraw. Yeah. He withdrew from the Pro-Am. That's fine. He's still going to tee it up, at least of right now, on Thursday. Listen, Brooks can come out here and storm the course. I have no doubt he can do that, but it just seems like a very big letdown spot for Brooks coming off the U.S. Open. I have 0% Brooks. Do you have any?
No, 0%.
Okay. This one comes from Ryan. I have $7,300 left for cash games. Hadley, Reavie, or Sabbatini. I'd go Hadley, followed very closely by Sabbatini, and I have no feel for Chez right now, so I just leave him off.
Yeah, same here. I think that's perfectly ranked.
Okay. Next question. What's the winning score? Is there a particular top-end guy you prefer if you think it's going to be a birdie fest? Well, we've seen a winning score as high as -22 here. That hasn't happened in quite some time. I'd say -13, -14, -15 is what you're looking at a winning score. I have more Spieth than anyone else at the very top end in terms of DraftKings, and the only other player that I use, because I think that if it does become a birdie fest and one of these top guys goes absolutely mental, that guy's going to be Justin Thomas.
Exactly. That was the only name I would add there. If you look at birdies or better gain, and I mean Justin Thomas he's number one if you rate this out like the custom stat model or your stat model in Fantasy National for 36. Justin Thomas comes number one in all of these statistical categories. So if it is going to be a birdie fest and it is going to be talent at the top, you got to go with Justin Thomas. Now your lineups have to dive into that sub 7, and there's some guys I'm sure that we'll talk about later in the segment. But yeah, at the top, to me, it's Justin Thomas and Jordan Spieth.
Yeah, the problem with Justin Thomas this week, like you mentioned, when you take him in your lineup, you're sacrificing so much on the low end, and this is just not a deep field. It's a very good field, but it's like top 40 stacked, and then the rest of the guys are like, oh, that's a bit dicey down there. So you can do it, but you're inheriting far more risk. And although I like Justin Thomas objectively the best, if we threw salary out, we have to consider salary when we're making these lineups. And Spieth makes it work. Spieth makes it work easier at the bottom end of your lineup than Justin Thomas does. Billy B, do you worry about Rory here? Of course, I always worry about Rory. 3 big Euro events in a row next 3 weeks. Think he might want to get out of here fast. I don't think he'd be here if he wanted to get out of here fast. He has no real obligation to be playing this event. You have to play once every 4 years at these events, and he played this event last year. I think he just likes the course. I think it's close. He missed on the weekend, and I think Rory can be fine here. I'm not using him, but I know a whole lot of people who think that Rory is a top-notch play. Plus, if you do want to go with Rory and go, let's say 50% Rory, you're going to get him at like 8% ownership.
Yeah, that's fantastic. What's interesting about Rory, too, is like sort of his approach to where he's at. I think a lot of it is between the ears. Obviously, he's one of the top players in the world, so I don't think it's mechanics so much as what we saw from him last week where he got there 2 weeks before and practiced and did this. And you hear a guy like Brooks or DJ, and I forget which one it was, saying, hey, if I can't figure out a course in 3 days, then I shouldn't be out here. I think Rory, with obviously the short turnaround time, even though he missed the cut, I think that bodes a lot better for him because then, coming at a course that he's played at before and kind of getting away from the idea that he has to be so mechanical and meticulous, I do like Rory because you can make a case that he's one of the best golfers in this field. So, of course, if you want to be overweight on him, you're going to get him at an extreme low ownership at an extreme high talent. So, for me, I'm not going to be playing Rory just because I'd rather be playing a guy like Spieth and JT. But yeah, I mean, Rory is a fantastic play if you want to play him.
Best golf betting site for Americans? I don't know. Not American. Hopefully, when everything passes, there'll be tons for you. Thoughts on Joel Dahman? I think Joel Dahman is a nice rebound from being the chalk and burning everyone. You're going to get him at like 2% ownership. He still rates out really well. He has had 2 really bad rounds. If you want to go in on Joel Dahman, I can sign off on that. Are you using him?
No, okay. I mean, at that low 7, there's other guys like Chesson that I'd rather use, but I just, you saw it, right? You saw like that huge bump in ownership in chalk Joel Dahman. I'm not going to be on it, no.
Kyle also asked, can we trust Jordan Spieth this week? I'm sick of getting burned. Well, that's the thing. Everyone's sick of getting burned. And remember, this happened with Rory at the beginning of the year over and over and over. And we just kept saying, listen, you just keep playing Rory until he pops at one of these courses, and boom, at API, all of a sudden, Rory's running away with it, and you did single-digit ownership. I don't think that Spieth gets down to single-digit ownership this week, but I think that you're going to see him below 15%, which I think is pretty good for the guy who's the defending champion. And although he missed that putt on 18 at the U.S. Open, I feel like he found something, at least in that second round at Shinnecock Hills.
Yeah, and there's some, it's bent with POA, so potentially there's a narrative there, right, that the greens will be, there's no way they're going to be similar at all to the greens that they played. But all it takes, right, like you were saying, is Spieth seeing those balls go in, right, seeing those 3-footers, those 5-footers go in, or just get the line right. And you'll hear it when he's doing his presser that, yes, all he wants to do is start to get alignment right and this and that. And once it clicks, this guy's one of the best. We saw it here last year. We've seen it before. And again, if he turns this around, I mean, he kind of did this last year too before the Open, where he was fiddling around with this putter, and then all of a sudden he pops. So I'm not going to be the one that's off and doesn't hit that, especially now when we're getting with depressed ownership. So I like Spieth here.
Max asks, more likely to win this week, Luke List or C. Woo Kim? The answer to that question is always C. Woo, since Luke List has never won anything in his life.
Exactly. Yeah, it's C. Woo.
Kyle says James Hahn is back this week. That means we need to get a James Hahn! who I'm not using this week. Are you using James Hahn?
No, I do like the build up there, but no Hahn for me.
Ponderosa, Ryan Moore, Charley Hoffman, who is the better play, aka and who is going to be chalkier? Ryan Moore is going to be chalkier, but I do think that Ryan Moore is the better play.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, both of these guys play well. Pete dies, but I do like Ryan Moore here, and he's going to be the chalky play.
Favorite play at $6,800 and below. I'm only using one guy from sub $7,000 this week, and it's my main man, spitting hot fire, Dylan Maya. Just because I like he looked like a giant nerdlinger at last week's U.S. Open, performed well. Second start as a pro now, and hey, he's 1 for 1 in cuts made. 100% cut rate as a PGA professional. You gotta like that. So I'm gonna roll the dice on the kid.
Sam Saunders, I know he's been absolutely atrocious, but at 6,500, if you're playing the JT ownership and you want to go heavy on him, or just you want to be overweight in JT, Sam Saunders at 6,500. I mean, yeah, take a couple of dart throws with this guy because we've seen it before. Granted, he could give you a missed cut like he has in the last 3 tournaments, but in between those missed cuts, he got you a 9th. So Sam Saunders is someone that I'm looking at if I'm going with those JTs, just so I can get some relief in that mid area. And there's some guys that I like above the 67, but if it's below that, then it's Sam Saunders for me.
Yeah, I'm going to stay far away from Sam Saunders. Can't do it for me. I always like him more earlier in the year. It seems like once we get to the summer months, Sam Saunders is not so hot anymore. Brian asks, true thought on gel icing. This comes from the Tim Andercust poll from his Twitter account, @TimAndercust87, where he was convinced that gel icing was the best sort of icing in the world. Now, I think this is a debate left with, I mean, listen, what am I going to weigh in on icing? How much icing do you think I eat? None. This is best left for people with diabetes. So I'm just going to say no. Clearly no one likes it.
Yeah, I don't even know what that is. I don't want to go too much into it, but yeah, that's who argues the merits of icing. So that I have no idea what to say on it. So I have no input to this.
Jeff asks, is Patrick Reed a good one-and-done play this week? Yeah, I don't see why not. He's not my one-and-done pick, but sure.
Yeah, I think he's one of these guys too, like you were saying, right? I mean, we saw him pop at the U.S. Open. He's one of these guys that have been playing really good this year. If you want to save him somewhere else, potentially at the Open at Carnoustie, you could see doing that. But yeah, if you want to take one of these elite guys in this weaker field, even though it's strong, then yeah, he's a good one-and-done play.
Thoughts on Pat Perez this week? The ball striking is way down. I know the price is so alluring. And I know he did just make the cut and perform okay at the U.S. Open, but can't do it. I know this should be one of those plays. Like I remember the last time we were at, like when I won at Heritage, the only reason that I had Kodaira in my lineup was world ranking versus price. And I was like, that's stupid. The 37th player in the world should not be $6,600. And if you do compare world ranking in terms of the actual pricing at $7,000 for Pat Perez, he seems wildly undervalued, but he has just not been good in ages.
Yeah, I got a little star by him on my fantasy national model, but it's so hard to pull the trigger on Pat Perez. Well, how about your boy right there, Wes Bryan, right at 7K? I think you can make a little bit better case for him in terms of the corollaries a little bit more. But it's when it's all said and done, I'll probably be playing Pat Perez, but not very confident at all. But like you were saying, right, he's down. He shouldn't. Against those other names in that range, he shouldn't be down there, but he's playing like garbage. So you're going to have to take that risk.
Steven says he's all in on CT Pan winning in CT, Connecticut. I mean, that's a good narrative. I like that one. Will he pan out and fly around this Pete Dye track like Peter Pan? Or do you think he will be more wild off the tee than a chimpanzee? That is just excellent stuff.
That is fantastic.
The greens and regulation are there. He's trending the past 4 tournaments, getting better and better and better and better. Of course, this is going to be one of these courses where he could really pop, and he's a very quality player. Comes from a good pedigree, especially coming out of college. Washington, I think it was. But I think he's just going to be too popular for me this week. I got sucked into the Joel Dahman stuff 2 weeks ago, and it just blew up in my face. Let me go check to see what the actual ownership is on Pan right now. CT coming around like 13%. Like that's less than Kyle Stanley, or more than Kyle Stanley. Like it feels unnecessary to me. He's just too pricey. I wish he was $6,800. I know that would make his ownership like 25%, but or the other guys around him I just think are better. If you want to go with CT, the evidence points to him having a good week. I'm just going to fade on ownership purposes alone and try to get creative that way.
Exactly. I mean, a couple guys are below him, right? Siwoo, your boy, and Adam Hadwin. Yes, we haven't seen Hadwin
I'm not doing Hadwin. I honestly think he's hurt.
You still think there's something why he pulled out of when he pulled out the RBC?
Yeah, well, he pulled out of the Heritage. No word on why he pulled out, and ever since he's come back, he's been awful.
Yeah, his putting. I mean, good God. I mean, but my point being is there's guys, even Troy Merritt, right? There's other guys that you can build a case around. Yes, CT Pan is playing well, but Raza said it yesterday on your show. It's like when you start to play with the CT Pan chalk, then you really got to start to figure out, okay, is this guy going to give you at least top 20, top 15? I'd rather go on other guys down here because of that. And so I'm going to be full fading CT Pan because eating that 15% chalk, I'm not going to be able to potentially play guys like Troy Merritt, where in par 4 scoring, Troy Merritt is top 10. So I'd rather play these type of guys as opposed to CT Pan and eat that ownership.
Best play at $8,400 or below for my last spot. Already have Cantlay and currently Harman in the last spot, but I see he is incredibly underfucked. Yeah, that hurts. that hurts a lot. It depends on what you want to do. How much is Harman? 86?
Harman is
83. So
83, yeah.
I mean, I would prefer Zach Johnson over Brian Harman. I think that was the head-to-head that I actually played. Zach Johnson over Brian Harman. So Zach Johnson is probably the safest of those guys. I just think that, as always, if you're shooting for pure upside, Luke List is the guy for me. But, I mean, I'm not objective on that anymore. So Zach Johnson's probably a better play. And like I said, I'm using a fair amount of JB Holmes.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. JB, I mean, you look at his putting. It is absolutely atrocious. But his tee to green game is fantastic, right? He's playing really well tee to green, but losing a massive amount of strokes on putting. Like even if he goes even with the field, you're getting a guy who's playing really well on 8K. I think that's a really good price. He's playing well as of late. There's some other guys like we talked about, right, like Luke List that are down there sub 8. But yeah, at that 8K and above, and that that $3,000 price range, I think JB is a fantastic play over there.
Are you worried about Casey's 400 to 400 yard efficiency? Been steadily getting worse over the past 50 rounds. I am not. Are you?
No. This guy's an elite ball striker.
Yeah. No. Is there any reason to play below $7,500 this week? I mean, if you want access to Justin Thomas, which I did, then yes, you kind of have to go that route. But if you want to play balanced, no, I don't see a reason to go below that number.
No, I mean, you can easily start to, at that being at your cap, right? At the bottom there at 75, and there are a lot of guys, even if you want to go a little bit lower at 73, right? There's a lot of guys in there, but
so your answer is yes. So your answer is yes to that question. Okay, you can go below it if you want. All right.
Yeah.
Gun to your head, Spieth or Casey? I'll take Spieth. You always take Spieth.
Yeah, Spieth.
There's a reason he's higher priced. There's a reason that the betting market is way more bullish on him than they are on Paul Casey. When you look at the Fantasy National Event Simulator, when they simulate the event 1,000 times or 10,000 times, who's most likely to win? It's Jordan Spieth. It's not Paul Casey.
Yeah, it's Spieth.
Listen, I love Paul Casey this week, but if we're throwing price out of it, just 1 versus 1, I would want to have more Jordan Spieth.
Yeah.
Thoughts on Bo Hostler this week? This comes from Owen. I really have no thoughts on Bo Hostler. I can never figure that guy out.
No, he was getting some early tournament pub, but in terms of a sleeper, but I don't like Bo Hostler here.
Okay.
No.
Next one. Kyle says, haven't had a chance to listen to the DK podcast. Any update on the weather advantages? Well, I have that open right now. Look at the super forecast. It says it's going to rain overnight on the initial, like if you just look at it. But if you look at the super forecast, there's no rain on it, which is really bizarre. But it does look like it's going to potentially be a bit wet coming into the day, also where the highest amounts of winds are in the morning. But there's no distinct tee advantage. You trade a little bit of extra wind for potentially softer course, but it's not going to be like super, super, super duper hot. I mean, it might get up to like 28 degrees Celsius. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. I'm guessing like 30,000 or something stupid like that. I can't figure out Fahrenheit.
Yeah, it's probably going to be in the mid-80s, I think. Like
Yeah.
But still, it's not going to be as bad as it was last week. So no weather concerns, no tee time splits for me.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to get guys that maybe are a bit worse putters and run them out Thursday morning in a showdown contest, I guess that makes sense. Or potentially even a first-round leader market. I scattered across the day because I don't really see a big bias. But as always, I mean, a bias could, that we just don't foresee, establish itself during the day. Like we saw that at Memorial. No one thought there was going to be a tee bias at Memorial, and one of the stacks was like 3.5 strokes better. So if you just wanted to stack some AM tee times or stack some PM tee times, there's nothing preventing you from doing that, and you could potentially put yourself in a situation to take advantage of wind that could just pop up out of nowhere.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the gusts, right? I mean, these guys play in 10 to 15 all the time. So it's the gusts that you have to worry about. But even then, I'm not too concerned about it. I think you want to play the guys that you want to play.
Favorite possible upside play below 7K. It's from Freetown. It's Dylan Meyer. Kevin asks, with the balanced lineup seemingly more popular than Stars and Scrubs this week, smart to go heavy on JT to leverage suppressed ownership? I think so. This is why I'm using, I think I have 20% Justin Thomas, which is going to be well over what his projected ownership is, because I think that's coming in right now at 13%. So I'll have slightly more than the field. I just find it really hard to make lineups with Justin Thomas, and I think a lot of people are experiencing that problem.
Yeah, same here. I'm just going to match the field. I'm going to be around 15%, so 3 of 20 lineups. But yeah, I think it's a solid play, right? It's you're contrarian against the field, and that's how you want to play these matchups if you're doing that. So I agree with that, but it's tough.
Any Ken Duke or Czechia love this week? None from me.
No Ken Duke.
I would play the Duke, though. He is a former winner here over Czechia if I had to. Next one, Ethan asks, Pat Perez or Kevin Tway? I personally have 0% of both, and Tway looks like he kind of hit a wall on his little mini run.
Yep.
I would just go with the established, cheaper, better player in Pat Perez in that situation.
Yeah, agreed.
All right. Remember, give the episode a like. Jagermeister, Fantasy National, all that fun stuff. We got 23 minutes left, so let's get into this. Thoughts on Webb Simpson's ownership? Webb Simpson, I have him projected to be the third highest owned player on the slate, so 21% right now.
Yeah, I mean, rightfully so, right? People have seen him play. They obviously want the players, right? So you can kind of get that narrative of, right, he likes Pete Dye courses, shorter courses. So yeah, I think that's the case. But even I would say even more so than Webb, or more so than Casey, Webb is a guy potentially you can pivot off of. But he's a solid play here. He likes this course. He likes these shorter courses, and he's playing really well this year. So he's a solid play, but I would pivot ownership on Webb more than the other guys.
Do you have a preference? Kyle asked, with Adam Hadwin and JJ Spawn, can ever figure these guys out? I figured out JJ Spawn 1 week, and then the other weeks I did not have the magic key to open that lock to get some fantasy points out of it. But hey, he paid enough at Byron Nelson to last himself like a year, so that's good news. With Adam Hadwin, like I said, he's either injured or something's wrong. The guy can't putt anymore, almost like in a Spiethian type manner, going from one of the best putters to one of the worst. But now he's not even gaining strokes around the green anymore, which used to be his calling card. And even at Memorial, he was bleeding strokes off the tee, bleeding strokes through approach. We saw that again last week at the U.S. Open. It just seems like there's a problem with him right now, so I'm going to fade Adam Hadwin. I'm going to fade JJ Spawn too. I have him the first round leader, but at least with him, he's gained strokes with his approaches in the past 6 rounds. He is a good ball striker. You just have to hope that his around the green and his putting don't just completely melt him down, but it's at least nice to see that he's being positive in areas that are more consistent than where Hadwin is.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's just for me, I like Hadwin a little bit more just from a talent perspective. Like both these guys can play, and we're not seeing it really from either. So again, if it's compared head to head, I'm taking Hadwin in that sense, but not comfortable with it like we talked about earlier. I just rather use Hadwin there.
Matt says, is stacking CT Pan and C, Kim in cash games a crazy person move? I would say yes. I mean, there are very few out there who love Siwoo Kim as much as I do, but he is not the trustworthy type, put it that way. No.
I mean, there is a narrative that these Asian players do play well in these shorter courses, right, where irons come to play and wedge plays, have to be more precise. But in cash game, that's bold. I wouldn't do that.
Rob asked about the weather, and he has a point. Guys like Xander have the best strokes gained over 80 degrees, which, again, I don't know what that is. But Hadwin has the best strokes gained under 70 degrees. Which will it be on Saturday? Saturday weather, they don't even have that in the super forecast yet.
Under 70 degrees. It's a pretty cold June.
let's see, Saturday weather, it's going to be 20 degrees Celsius. So figure that out. Get on the metric system. What's wrong with you people? It's 94 degrees out today. Great.
We just want to embellish everything.
Yeah.
We want to make sure everything is the largest thing possible.
What do you guys think of McGirt this week? I'm out. You on dirt?
Nope, no dirt.
Heading down to Travelers tomorrow. Would you still roster JB if you had to watch him putt? That is tough. So, Vince, I don't know what to tell you on that one. I would because I like JB, but hey, listen, there's like 3 times a year where JB leads the field in putting. Then he's like last every other week. But hey, maybe it's one of these good weeks. Yeah. Always better on POA too with JB Holmes.
Right. I think it was a couple weeks ago where he was six strokes gained putting. That was fantastic in the midst of all of the bad ones. But yeah, and if you're watching golf, don't follow a golfer. Just sit in one spot and just see how guys come through. To me, that's a pro tip number 1 is you don't want to unless it's one of your favorites, sit in one spot and just watch these guys come through.
Question about Steele's ownership. Will he have depressed ownership because of all the good plays in the $7,000 range? I think he'll fall behind Griot. I think he's probably next, though, is the thing. 15 to 18%, depending on where people fall on him. Good course history, good price. He's going to be in a lot of people's cash games. Even had a pretty decent week until Sunday at the U.S. Open. So I think that he's going to be popular. That doesn't deter me because I do like Brendan Steele this week. I bet him to win it 80-1.
Yeah, the last 5 years, no worse than a top 25. So he's the leader in terms of strokes gained total since 2013. So yeah, he's gonna get that ownership, but he plays really well. So he's going to be in a ton of my lineups as well.
Free Time asks, what weather station are you using this week? I'm going to dump that in the chat right now. It's not particularly close to TPC River Highlands because there was nothing really close to TPC River Highlands. So it's the Hartford Airport one, which I think is 20, 30 miles away. If you just zoom in on Windfinder to where the course is, you can see sort of patterns developing, at least in terms of direction and potentially what the wind is going to be. So these wind estimates are not the most accurate thing in the world. It's a suburb of Hartford. I know that the weather isn't drastically different between downtown Toronto and an hour away, but it could be. They always get more snow than we do downtown. So it's a tough one to figure out. It doesn't seem like, even just looking on the PGA site, it doesn't seem like there's a distinct wind or weather advantage. So I'm not too concerned about it. Will Jason Day be less than 10% owned? It's a good question. I don't think so. I think enough people will see that price and bite the bullet.
Yeah, I think it's going to be right around that 10%, which is interesting at first, right? Because of recency bias, I'm I'm not playing Day. But thinking about it more, right, of the value that you want to get in terms of price and ownership, Jay Day is that one guy, sub 10K at 9,800 that gives you that potential return with value, right? Because of his price and how much of an elite golfer he is. And so I'm going to be looking a little bit more into Jay Day. Approach isn't as important. It is still important here, but not as important because he's been atrocious. So I'm going to be looking into that. But you're right, 10% is around where I got him to.
Doug Cohn says, with Griot letting so many people down last week, will he bounce back with some nice golf? I certainly hope so. And a lot of people are banking on that too because he's one of the chalkier guys of the week. Here's a question for you from Caleb. Is Webb a good pivot off the chalkier Casey and Bryson? You're just pivoting chalk onto chalk. Those are three of the 4 highest projected owned players of the week. So if you want to really pivot off of one of them because of ownership, Webb wouldn't be the guy to go to?
Leishman is probably that guy in that range.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So or even Day, Day 10%.
Or even Day.
Leishman 13%. The guy who just no one's going to own in general from the upper 20 is Billy Horschel. I haven't projected at 2% ownership. Yeah,
Billy Ho is not giving me any love. Not from me neither. But yeah, the potential pivot is don't do the narrative that you saw last week, right, where chalk won out. I don't think that's going to be the same. I think that was an anomaly. So for me, if I'm moving off of that chalk, it's Leishman and Day in that top range we talked about.
Brian asked, what do you expect the ownerships to be on Leishman, Day, and McIlroy? Leishman around 13%, Day around 10%, Rory around 8% for me. Are you surprised by the relatively, sub 20%, low ownership for such good course histories as Steele and Hoffman? They are practically guaranteed as top 20 looking at their last 5 to 6 years. I would not guarantee a single thing as it comes to golf. Let's be real here, people. I'm surprised it's that low, but, when you're getting You have someone like Bubba Watson, who's won twice, who's basically the same as Charley Hoffman, who's never won here. I mean, by that logic, wouldn't you want the guy who wins rather than the guy who comes T18? And with Steele, there's just a lot of good guys in his range. That I understand why that they're sub 20%. They're still going to be, at least Steele, he's going to be some of the higher owned in that $7,000 range, though.
Yeah, exactly. You're exactly right. I think with course history, and that's sort of baked in right to the pricing as well. And that's why we see a Ryan Moore at 9,000. Because of some of these courses, it's baked into the pricing as well. So I would temper that in terms of guaranteeing anything, like you said, especially when it comes to course history.
Will Casey be popular in one and done? I'm pretty behind and don't want to use too much chalk. Yeah, Billy, if you're behind and you need to catch up, do not use Paul Casey because a lot of people are going to be using Paul Casey this week.
Yeah.
Russell Knox, JB Holmes, or Keegan Bradley? I'll take JB Holmes.
Yeah, JB as well.
Okay. Russell Knox is someone I really wanted to like coming into the week. And I really should be using him on DraftKings, but he burned me on the 18th hole last week, and it made me sad. And I didn't like how, and in terms of like the betting market, if he was at like 75 to 1 where Keegan's at, I would bet him, but he's at like 50, now 45 to 1. I'd rather take guys that are double the odds that I think have just as good of a chance. I think that he is looking a lot better right now, though. This is a decent spot to use Russell Knox. What is the projected Omer on Jamie Lovemark? Why isn't he getting more looks from the DFS community? I think this week, because there's just so many good names right around him, I actually really like Jamie Lovemark this week. He's always up and down, and every time that you push on Jamie Lovemark, it never really works out. The ball striking is there. He was once a pretty good putter. That hasn't really translated so much recently, and he might get lost in the shuffle of all the other chalkier names that are right around him. Like in the cheat sheet up on DK Playbook right now, he's one of my plays. I like Jamie Lovemark. I am projected to come in at 9% owned, and I'll bet you he comes in lower.
Yeah, and if you want to pivot, right, if you think that some of these guys in that 7K range, the high 7K range, are going to be chalky, then yeah, Lovemark is great. Your strokes gained tee to green, ball striking, it's there. He loses some on par 4, but he makes it up on par 5. Granted, there's only 2 this week that you're going to be seeing, but that's what you need, right? A Lovemark at sub 10 or around that percentage ownership is nice because he can hit the ball. He's the same as JB Holmes. He just cannot putt, but he's an extreme ball striker. So I like that pivot because of the tee to green and ball striking game there.
Everyone remember, give the episode a like, help to keep everything free. And if you're just tuning in now, you can watch us on demand whenever you like. Plus, you can download the audio version about 15 minutes after the show ends. And you can do that. DFS Tavern, who actually runs a live chat show right after this one, if you want to go check that out. He says, hello, Pat and Reed. Thanks for doing this video each week. Should I drink Jägermeister with my beer? Or energy drink this weekend? I would just say beer. Just put a shot of Jägermeister in your beer if you want a real shot. And get yourself going. That's the move this week with Jägermeister.
Absolutely. Just get some bombs in there. Come on.
Who do you think is the chalk that will bust or underperform? I think it's going to be CT Pan.
Yeah, I mean, CT Pan.
At least I hope it's CT Pan.
Yeah, exactly. 15%. Yeah, at that price range, he's probably the guy, the candidate most likely to bust.
Thoughts on Patton Kizzire? Got that winning upside on the par 70s. I don't know what happened to that guy. He had it going. He's won twice this year, and like no one won. He's gonna be like sub 1%, and I can't even bite the bullet on him. I get the logic. Same reason that I used him at Heritage. Didn't work out well.
Yeah, he's just losing it, especially off the tee. And same as me, right? Because you want a wildlife. You see some of these shorter courses where you need to be precise, but no way.
What would be your rank to most likely make the cut from these 3 guys? Furyk, Sink, or Vaughn Taylor? I would go Sink, Furyk, Vaughn Taylor. That would be my power rankings.
I would just flip Furyk and Sink.
It's funny. Those 3 guys are my last 3 guys off my playlist this week. Because I was thinking about doing more stars and scrubs, and I would have needed to add a few of those names. Like I think Vaughn Taylor's in the upper 6s, Sink's in the lower 7s. But I just decided to go more balanced and do more stars and scrubs.
Yeah.
What are your top stats to add to my fantasy national model? That's from Brandon. Well, if you check out my column up on dkplaybook.com, whether it's the field preview or it's the DK cheat sheet, my key stats are listed in there, and those are the ones that I weighted the heaviest. So check it. Webb has a track record at short tracks this year, but his ball striking numbers aren't that impressive. Where do you come out on him here? I'm going full fade on Webb Simpson this week. We talked about chalk guys. It's not that I don't think that he's going to do well. I am gambling that he's not going to do well because I know he's going to be so popular, and I can't play all the popular guys. And for reference, I did this last week with Henrik Stenson where, hey, I know he's going to be chalky, so I'm not going to play him. Yeah, it didn't work out. So maybe Webb's the guy, maybe Bryson's the guy you want to fade, but I'm going Bryson and Casey over Webb Simpson this week. 0% for me.
Yeah, and if you like Ryan Moore, right, he's right there. And so you got to make a stand somewhere. You can't play all of these guys because you're just not differentiating. So for me, I want to be in on Webb. I do like him a little bit more than Ryan Moore in this situation. So I'll be about 20% either matching the field on Webb because I haven't come in around that price range. Again, this is something that if I'm fading a little bit more of Ryan Moore than I'd like to see, I just think his price is a little inflated because of his course history, but he's still a good play. For me, it's going to be Webb, though.
Would you go Vaughn Taylor or Abraham Ansa?
Vaughn Taylor.
Yeah, I'd go Vaughn Taylor too. Even just looking back at it, after that run of like 16, 13, 8 for Abraham Ansa, he's been 58 miscut, 42nd, 52nd, 57th miscut. Like even when he's making the cut, he's not really doing. At least I've seen Vaughn Taylor win on the PGA Tour before. I'm not playing either, but like that would be. And when it comes to approach game, Vaughn Taylor usually pretty lights out. So I would say Vaughn Taylor. So that's for you, Brian. Neither one. Oh, this one's just for you because Bryce already knows I like Kevin Streelman this week. What do you think?
Yeah, I like Streelman. I think he has good course history here. We want to see him on these shorter courses. In the early season, he was doing well on par fives, and so I do like that he has some same par five. I will be playing some Streelman just because he's a solid ball striker. For me, in that price range, I'm going to be a little bit more, like I said, a little bit more Siwoo, which might bite me, but at 7,400, Kevin Streelman, I think, is a fine play.
All right, 9 minutes left. We got to start flying through these to get through them all. Is McGirt or Hahn more likely to make the cut in your mind? McGirt.
Yeah, Hahn's due for a miscut again.
Yeah, Ponderosa. I have 20 lineups and 20% Brooks. Is that too much? I think that's a perfectly acceptable amount. That's around 4 times the field. Listen, if you like Brooks, you use like 80% Brooks.
Yeah, exactly. He's one of the top players. He just won. Yeah.
I feel like he's one of those guys that you want to push all in on or just completely fade. I've decided to completely fade. I could be completely wrong, but if you're going to use him, 20% is a good number. 50%, even better number if he wins. Frank asked, thoughts on Austin Cook this week? Did well at St. Jude. Does he keep it going? I think he does. He is, I think, the perfect pivot play off of CT Pan because you have so much chalk in that area that Austin Cook is the one flying through the cracks. I've used him at 14% in my lineups, looking at it right now.
Yeah, no Austin Cook for me. Like I said, I like Steele, Siwoo. Again, Steele's going to be chalk, but I like Siwoo a little bit better in terms of the correlation. So Siwoo for me.
Any preference for the AM, PM, tee times first round leader? Like we said, it could be softer in the morning, but it's going to be windier in the morning. At least that's what it looks like. So in the afternoon, it could get faster, but the conditions could be down and guys can pin stock. I scattered my first round leader bets throughout the day.
Yeah, nothing for me. I'm just trying to play guys that I think are going to get a lot of birdies, so nothing for me.
Do you think it's time for another Satoshi Kodaira play? It's a nice short course. Oh, I wish I could pull the trigger on it, but I can't. I've cashed out. I've cashed out my Kodaira shares.
Yeah, you can't. Don't tarnish the Kodaira effect. It was beautiful. Just let it be.
I don't think it's a terrible play though. I think the logic makes sense.
Oh. Yeah, no, he's another guy, right? Down in that price range, his overall golf ranking. We've seen it before on a Pete Dye course and a short course. Then yeah, there's a narrative there, but right, he's got what 11. I think he's played 19 tournaments and he's missed 8 cuts. So right, and he's got that one victory. And I think we're hanging on to that. So I'd be fine fading him, but I think he's a nice play here.
Does Steele playing so little worry you? I can go up to Bradley. Who do you prefer? I actually like Brendan Steele a little bit more. He came back, played well last week at the U.S. Open. Keegan obviously did not, but does have a good course history. Both are fine plays. I prefer Brendan Steele.
Yeah, same here.
Right, next one. Please explain why everyone is talking about the same golfers, including Optimizer, yet these names didn't perform well. I don't quite know what that means. Do you feel the same about some of the really young guys such as Gim and Meyer? Or how do you feel? I'm playing Meyer. I'm not playing Gim. You?
No, Doug Gim. I think Meyer is a nice play. I mean, we saw him play really well at the U.S. Open in terms of his first tournament at the U.S. Open. So Gim is interesting, but I'm not going to be playing him.
If Gim was down at the same price as Meyer instead of being 7,100, I would have more interest, but he's not, so I don't.
Exactly.
Vaughn Taylor, question mark? He's a player in this field. We've talked about a whole bunch of times. Are you mainly ignoring putting stats coming into the week? Doesn't seem that important when using the time machine. Yes and no. I actually factored it into my model at a 5% weighting, and I normally do 0. In the past, before they changed the greens up a bit and they were exceptionally slow. Putting didn't seem to matter whatsoever, but they played really fast last year after converting to this bent POA mix, so it could be a little bit different than in years past. It'd be more like last year than the previous 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, exactly. Because of that change, we saw POA quite a bit. Now it's bent, so I'm going to
No, it's the other way. It was bent. Now
or
it's
other way around, excuse me. Yeah. So I think it matters a little bit more. Fact of the matter is, I think when you see putting, right, you want to see some form. It doesn't necessarily have to be one of your main ones, but you want to see a pop somewhere from these guys. So even though guys don't come in strong like a JB Holmes, JB Lovemark, you want to see it somewhere. So I think it does matter.
Do you see a guy in the $7,000 range actually winning? Haas is going to be all over it this weekend. I don't agree about Bill Haas, but yeah, I think that there's a guy in the $7,000 range. There's multiple guys in the $7,000 range that I think that could win this week. Siwoo, List, hell, Keegan could win, Streelman could win,
Yep.
Steele could win. I mean, they're not likely to win, but they definitely could win.
Yeah, List would be the guy in that range that I would just, if there's someone I want to hang my hat on, it's List.
Do you have any thoughts on Russell Henley? I don't. He's not that he's going to be super chalky, but I think that people are going to remember him from last weekend, use him. So he asked Henley or Steele. I'm using Steele over Henley.
Yeah, Henley's interesting. I think he's one of these guys that go under the radar as a Pete Dye player. He plays Pete Dye courses really well. So I will be using some. I think Steele is a better play, but I do like Henley at that price range, especially on a pivot. Yes, we've seen him and we saw him last week, and so guys will inflate the ownership, but I do like that play this week.
Thoughts on Martin Laird this week? I really have none for Party Marty.
None.
Okay, I've been struggling with round 1 showdown lately. Any tips to get an edge on picking first round plays? I would always stack tee times in first round, regardless if there's a weather advantage or not. You're hoping to put yourself in that position. I'm actually not very good at first round, and so I don't even play it anymore. I prefer the weekend showdown slates much better than I prefer the the Friday one's not so bad, but just I haven't had a lot of success with Thursday, so I just stopped playing it.
Yeah, same with me. I think we see right with the weekend, we can see how the course is potentially playing and where we can find some spots. Right, this is like you're projecting, right, the first day. So I don't really play the showdown. I'd rather wait till the weekend as well because we can get more information.
Just joined. Sorry if you covered this, but what player above 10K do you trust like the most? What player between 9K do you trust like the most? Paul Casey in the $9,000 range for me for trust and like the most. Above, I would trust Justin Thomas the most, but he's too expensive, so Jordan Spieth for me. Those are the only two that I'm playing from above there. That's where I landed on it. Next one, why does your cheat sheet always say 1 and 1 instead of 1 and done? Because I've had it that way for the past 4 years, because I made a typo 4 years ago, and only one person notices it like every 6 weeks. So it's a good Easter egg to find. Congratulations on spotting it, Rob. Last one for you, Reed, because I'm going to keep going here because there's a ton of questions, but I know you got a bolt. Do you like the Gooch this week?
I do not like the Gooch. I usually like playing him in some of these tournaments, but no Gooch for me. Sorry.
All right, Reid Fowler, where can everyone find you on Twitter, and what's some of the work that you've done this week?
Yeah, so Reid T. Fowler on Twitter. So my name just spelled out with the T in the middle. We've done a lot of good stuff with course previews on DK Live and some other stuff coming through in terms of the course history and all of that great stuff. And that's on DK Live and the DK Playbook. But on Twitter, it's Reid T. Fowler.
All right. Thank you for joining us. And like I said, you can Reid T. Fowler on Twitter is where you can find Reid, DK Playbook, DK Live, all that fun stuff. We're going to say adios, dude. Good luck this week.
All right, bud. You too. Take care.
All right. We're going to stick here with just me.
Okay.
We're going into bonus time on the live Q&A checks. I did not anticipate these many questions to go on. Thoughts on Xander at 8,600. Will he be popular? If so, will he be worth it? I don't think that he's going to be popular this week, frankly, in juxtaposition to like Patrick Cantlay, who's right there. I think he'll garner double-digit ownership. I'm not using him, but I think that it makes a lot of sense that if you do like him, that you should go massively overweight on him. He's a nice play off of Patrick Cantlay if you want to do that. So, boom. Top-tier players for the past 3 years have not finished well on this tournament besides Jordan. Okay. Or Bubba Watson, who was like the second biggest favorite who won 3 years ago. But sure, okay. Thoughts on Xander. Playing 20 entry max. How many lineups, cores, do you recommend using? I have been using 3 lineups of 4 golfers and interchanging the final 2 smarts. Is this smart? What's your strategy? I'll just say tune in. There's no right answer to this. Everyone has different personal preferences. But Brandon, who won the Millionaire Maker last week, split it, won the $575 grand. Friday show, we actually get into this, and I ask him, because he's been doing this for a very long time, about how to build your core when you're playing. He played 21 lineups in the Millionaire Maker, and he talked about how he built his core. He used 21 players for that, and he even admitted, he said it was too many. It worked out, but it was too many guys to use, and not normally what he does, because he built all of his lineups at 3 a.m., so he didn't really get a good sense. He just wanted to get everything in. But I had 21 players for 21 lineups. Probably seems like too many, because a lot of these guys like to go super overweight, using guys at 50, 60, 70%. I'm not one of those types of guys, but I'm also not the most successful DraftKings player going. So it seems like the very, very, very good guys use a very small core, stack them big, and do it the way that you're doing. Build a core of like 4 to 6 or 7 guys, go massively overweight, interchange yourself, and then use some sort of 2 lineups with one guy, 2 lineups with another guy to fill in the pieces. So if your core does hit, you win big that week. And not just once, you give yourself the most bullets at winning that top prize, but you also give yourself a nice shot that if your guys do get through the cut and you get those 6 of 6s, that you're not just going to have one lineup that does well, you're going to have many runners and clean up for a big week. Oh, good. We're getting into comments again. It says, just leave the questions. We did this last week. What do you think of Bubba? Will be popular and one and done this week. If you don't use him, then where? I don't know. I have 2 one and done teams. I've used Bubba twice. Yeah, I used one at Riviera, one at Austin. He won twice. So if you do have Bubba, I would use him this week, unless you're so far behind that you need to come back. That'd be fine. Thoughts on Ken Duke? Don't like him. Keegan or List? I would like Luke List. Luke List sounds good. Graham Dillette, too. Graham Dillette's not playing, is he? No, Graham Dillette's still dead. I don't know what happened to Graham Dillette. He's not playing, so don't use him. Pat, favorite play below $7,200. I think it's Dylan Meyer when we just talk about straight up below $7,200. Let's see. Did I have anyone else listed? Wes Bryan. At 7,000. I do like Rory Sabbatini at $7,200. So those are the guys that I'd be using from down in that range. Who are your favorite Pete Dye players this week? I like Webb and Si Woo, but on the fence about Bryson and X. Who else pop up for me? Those are the guys. I'm playing Si Woo. I'm playing Bryson. I'm fading X and Webb because I know that Webb's going to be super popular, and I don't know how X is going to perform coming off a really grueling U.S. Open. I know he did it last year, although I did just watch the final round of the Travelers last night. They had the replay on the Golf Channel, super quick cuts, which is really how golf should be all the time, because it was very digestible and you got to see a lot of shots, although they condensed an entire final round into 1 hour. X had a really big Sunday, chipped in on 18 to pile up another birdie, so that's how he got there. It seems like a decent letdown spot. I do like X for the rest of the season. I generally like him just in your random tournaments, but I'll be fading him here this week. I guess the other guys, I have Pete Dye stuff here. Just let me pull it up on my computer. Pete Dye ball striking and Pete Dye just overall history I had somewhere as well. I tweeted this out earlier, and you can find it as links in my column too, so that's something to look at. Pete Dye ball striking, Keegan, in terms of the ball striking on Pete Dye courses, long-term Charley Hoffman, Jordan Spieth, Jim Furyk, always one of the better players. Russell Knox and Bubba Watson, 2 long-term Pete Dye players that are really good. Leishman, Paul Casey, Emiliano Grillo. Brooks, too, frankly. Long-term all of his rounds over the past 24 rounds, Brooks does rate out well. For short-term purposes, you're looking at players like Chesson Hadley, who's played really well at Pete Dye courses. CT Pan has played really well. Danny Lee is someone who pops up on that list, and Patrick Cantley as well. So if you're looking Pete Dye specific, I don't think that you need just to focus on Pete Dye stuff. I think it's just interesting to go and look at, and maybe that's a tiebreaker for you, but I wouldn't just load up that way. Fairly new to the show, what are the origins of "give your head a shake, pal"? Is a quote that my grandfather still tells me to this day when I say something incredibly stupid, and what he says to people who do it. So I just inherited it, added "pal" on the end in a very mean-spirited tone, and boom, there, you got a catchphrase. Do you use the DK points rank when deciding your lineups? Potentially as a tie break. I just like it as an indicator. Not average DK points, but I like DK points gained, because average DK points just doesn't really tell you anything. You have to put it into the context. Like if a guy plays Waialae and you're not even, let's say he plays Kapalua and he's in Tournament of Champions. Even if he plays poorly, he's going to score a bunch of DK points, and that will contribute to his average because it's a really easy course for one thing, and boom, there's no cut, so he gets to play all 4 rounds. So I think if you want to look at that kind of thing, looking at DK points gained over the field and average that out is better. It does it for you on fantasynational.com golf.com. If you have a membership, you can sort that easily. But I think it's interesting to see, especially when you correlate DraftKings points to finishing points, especially at tournaments like this where there's going to be a lot of birdies made that, I even talked about this with Rahm last week. Didn't really pan out, but Bubba's another guy who falls into this. Phil's always a guy. Luke List, another guy who always falls into this category where their DK points always generally factor out better than their finishing position because they trade a lot of birdies for bogeys instead of just being masters. Just guys that fit the... let's do someone. Gooch for the win. That's from Craig. To tway or not to tway? I'm going not to tway. Any interest in Czechia? Nope, none for me. Jason Day, number 1 on Pete Dye over the past 50 rounds in strokes gained total. Could be a recent flip in his iron play. We're also factoring in majors here. It's one of the reasons why Rory rates out really well, too. That Whistling Straits gets added where Jason Day won. Jordan Spieth is another one with this, but has performed better at the other Pete Dye courses. So some of the courses where Jason Day has performed really well on are not indicative of how this course is going to play. They're the longer Pete Dye courses, like Rory with Kiowa Island, for example, when you're just looking at strokes gained total. Those stats do not get factored into approach or anything like that, but the total ones do, because total you can actually track over the course of time. Thoughts on Russ Henley as a GPP play? I'm not using him. Sorry if you answered this already, but is it a Bubba week? Yes, I do believe it is a Bubba week. Last few times Pat is Bubba in 1. Saw that Bubba on his betting sheet, so he might be. So yeah, you're right. I'm in on 28 to 1 and the upper 8K. Any in or even shares? I'm going to say no because I don't think that's a real person. Why don't you like Pan? It's not that I don't like Pan, it's just I know he's going to be super chalky, and if I'm going to take a guy with a lesser skill set than all those around him at a high ownership, I learned my lesson with Joel Dahman. Could always be wrong, but it's a chalk fade for me, not so much an outright, I hate this guy fade. It's just, if everyone's going to be on him, I think it's very logical just to get off of him, and you can go on to Streelman, you can go on to Steele, you can go on to Austin Cook or Siwoo, 4 guys that I just think are better players than he is. Well, we're going to try to wrap this up here soon. Let's see. Projected ownership on Siwoo, 8% right now. Based on all the chatter, I'm starting to think that Brooks is my single bullet and going balance after him. Thoughts? I think it's a very interesting play. If Brooks comes through to you, get paid. Because like I said, he's going to be around like 5-6% owned. So if he wins, you're going to do very well, especially with the balanced lineup. If a first-time winner steps up to win this week, who would you take? Come on, man. It's Luke List. If there's going to be a first-time winner, it's got to be Luke List. All right? Could Party Marty show up this week? Sure, anyone can show up this week. 75% Spieth. Am I nuts? No, you're not nuts. Jonas Blix in play on a die course, 14th at Heritage. I was on him at Heritage too. If you want to, it's like one of every 4 Pete Dye courses he shows up. So if he just had a good one, likely he's not going to have a good one again. What do you think of Lahiri here, Birdie Machine? And I think he fits. I'm just never a Lahiri guy, so I'm out. Siwoo or James Hahn for GPPs? Probably Siwoo. I would take Siwoo at a Pete Dye course over James Hahn coming in with iffy for him. Who do you think will win outright? Bubba Watson. Haven't decided. Okay, great. Now we're going back and forth again. All right, well, people have mucked up the chat. So, are you mass entering, Pat? Not mass entering. I'm generally play just 20 lineups. I'm playing 40 this week in the $5 just to see. Oh, final one. Mitch says, Troy Merritt is popping on my model. It must be broken, right? I bet Troy Merritt to win. I bet him top 10, bet him first round leader, and I am using him in my DK lineups, and I think he's going to come in with very low ownership. Plus, I'm very interested in to see what he does this week as we head into the National, a tournament that he has won in the past. I believe we're back at Robert Trent Jones. I'm not 100% on that because the courses are getting all flipped around, and you know what? The National wasn't super on my radar to begin with, so I didn't do a whole lot of prep work, but if that is the case, I believe that is where he won. That or Amrondak or wherever the hell that course is. I'll look into it more next week, but Troy Merritt is on my radar. Been lights out with his iron games, and he is one of the better putters as we go along. Hasn't been flashing that putting stroke recently. If he can just get that back going, back to career norms and keep these irons fire, Troy Merritt could very well be into the mix. That will do it on the Pat Mayo Experience live Q&A. This is bonus time. I want to thank Reid Fowler for being on, of course. I want to thank all of you for tuning in and checking this out. You can always go back on demand to watch the video version where you can give it a like. Always goes a long way to help keeping the show free. Plus the podcast version, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, Podomatic, Audio Boom, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, other places where you listen to podcasts. I don't even know. I just use iTunes because I have an iPhone. But if you don't, I guess Stitcher and Google Play are probably the best on an Android platform, at least for you. Please rate, Subscribe, review, give it 5 stars. Always goes a long way. Plus, I'm giving away DK bucks. You got to tune into Monday and Tuesday show to figure out how you enter those contests. And part of it has to do with giving the shows a like. Like I said, goes a long way. The Pat Mayo Experience was brought to you by Jägermeister. So if you want to give your beer a real shot this summer, give it a nice cold shot. A Jägermeister. Jägermeister, get it in you. Not the official catchphrase or slogan for Jägermeister, but hey, I don't think it's all that bad. So get it in you. Jäger. All right? I'm Pat Mayo. Good luck with the Travelers Championship. I'll see you next time.